So let me open a new, so we're going to start with a new project. I'm going to go to current screen size here. I'm going to press the little photo that's on the left side, and then I'm going to press photos. This is going to bring me to my album. I use the dots in the corners of the pictures to size my canvas. I want to fit it to the canvas, and then go to the top corner here and press done. Now I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to hit my water droplet tool on the left. This is my color swatcher. So I'm going to pick a color, then I'm going to go to my, I want to use live watercolor brushes. So you notice here that it swatched the color. This is the size of my brush. This is the opacity. So now in a new layer, I'm going to start painting over this section with a live watercolor brush. I want to make sure my water flow is up because I want it to blend. I'm going to color swatch the next color in here. Go back to my brush. Start blending that right on top. So again, look, I'm in a new layer. And I'm tracing over my photograph, and I'm using my color swatcher to help me do so. So I'm going to finish. So you got to color swatch, then you got to reselect the tool you're using. So I'm going to fill in this part of the sky. This is your eraser right here. I have to erase this orange here that I did on this layer.
Mom, can I do that?
Okay, it's not letting me shut that out, but I'll do that later. So in order to shut layers as well, you got to have the layer highlighted and hit the eyeball. So that will turn it on and off, this little eyeball on the right. I'm going to color swatch the next color in the row. I'm going to add that here, and then I'm going to actually use the smudge brush right now, so watch what happens here. So I just did my sky only. Oh, I did it on the wrong layer. Hold on. I did the wrong layer. So I'm going to turn this back on. Fill in this orangey color. Oh, I did it again. So I'm filling in the orangey color that sits right there in this photo. So this is another thing. You got to make sure that you're in the right layers at the right time. Okay, so now if I want, I reselect this layer, right? I'm going to grab my sponge brush, and I'm going to actually go in and oh, it's frozen. Okay. So if you notice, it's kind of smudging over this just a bit. I'm going to raise the strength of the smudger. I don't really like how that's smudging, so I'm going to go to ink smudge. Alright, so that's pretty much all the tools. I'm going to go back to one that I kind of completed just so you can see what the finished version should kind of look like. So this is the way I did it here. So if I shut off all my layers, I'll click the layer, then hit the eyeball. Notice how I did each part in its own layer. This was the original photograph. But now when I shut off the photo, if I turn it on, I did my sky in one. I did the water kind of in the other. I did the sand, and I layered the trees on top. And I used different brushes for each one. So I kind of like used charcoal to get the grittiness of the tree. I used the watercolor splatter brush to give texture to the sand. And then I also used the watercolor brushes live for the sky and water so that it gave me that wet, washy look. Let me show you just one other one, and then that pretty much... So for people that have things that are very structured, I kind of did this pumpkin again. So if I shut off all my layers, I want to just show you what the original photo was. So if you have something that is very like a strong structure that you have to recreate, right? Like buildings or bridges, I think your best bet. So whenever you have to open these tools, it's the lines with the dots. So I raised the opacity here. But now, so that was the photograph. I'm going to shut the photo off for a second because I want you to see how I did it. So first thing I did here was I just outlined. So let me lower the opacity a little bit so you can see. So in one layer, I just did the outline. Then in another layer, I color blocked with one solid, like very dominant color of the object. So for those of you doing like trees or things like that, you might want to do something similar to the way I treated the pumpkin. I did the outline first so that I get all the structure correctly in there. So I just went in and outlined the main structure. Then the second layer, I put a solid block of color. And then the last layer was my highlights and lowlights. So now if I go back and shut off my picture, right, I want to make sure that's shut off. So again, you have to use this eyeball here on the right to shut it. It doesn't let you just double click it anymore. So this gives me a nice, really solid pumpkin, and it gives me that only in 3 layers. So one outline, one solid color block, and then highlights and lowlights. So that's for people that are doing things with grass and trees. That's probably the route you might want to take. So for instance, let's say I wanted to give this some type of grassy look. I could always go in. I'm going to make a new layer here. I'm going to raise this brush size a little bit. I'm not sure what... Oh. So I'm actually using the watercolor splatter brush, I believe. I think that's what I had selected right there. But I'm going to just use... I'm going to pick one of the pixel brushes because I am definitely more of a... So let's say you had grass. This is how I suggest you do grass. Kind of find out, like, what's the shape of the grass doing? Like, what's the outer shape, right? Kind of map that in there. Then for grass, because it's like there's a lot of tonal arrangements that happen, once you get the shape of it in there, I would block it in right up to the lines that you drew. Then I would do 2 color, or maybe 3, even 3 color variation of value. So what I mean by that is I would make a new layer. I would lighten the value a little, make my brush a little smaller. And then in here, I would go in and kind of like start to give some of that like grassy texture. So this is with the lighter color, right? So again, it depends on what your grass actually looks like. You might even want some to come off the canvas. But now if I do this again with a dark color as well, darker than what I had, you give like a dark, low, even medium too, kind of going in the gaps here. So I'm going all different directions, just kind of flicking my finger. Now I might even change that value one more time. So again, notice how I did this on 2 layers. I did the blob of color in one, and then the highlight, low lights, and middle lights in another. So I'm kind of throwing in a 3rd color here to give even more arrangement. Really working on those edges. So look, from far away, you can see the left side of my grass looks way better than the right. This is the same concept for those of you doing trees. So let's say, for instance, you had like a tree, right? So maybe your tree kind of looks like, that was a bit. So I'm going to kind of just do like the pretty like, I don't know, generic tree-like thing, right? That's like the shape of it. Let's imagine like this is the bark or something like that, right? So kind of like tree like that, right? So that's in one layer. Then I'm going to get another layer to do the color filling. So let me color swatch my green again. So again, you use the eyedropper for that. I'll go back to my brushes. I'm going to raise this up a bit.
So hard.
All right, and then I'm going to kind of go in swirly motions to fill the shape with a color. And then I'm going to go in one more layer to do the highlights, lowlights. So I would hit the color, move it to a little lighter, then maybe do some like textures like that. So again, you don't have to use this brush, obviously. I just picked it randomly. Then I'm going to do some darker tones. So everything always has like a dark, low, and middle highlight. So that kind of, so from far away, that tree kind of looks very, this brush is a little too, but you could always go back in as well and draw actual, if you wanted to. You could draw like actual leaves on these trees as well. in different tones. But I think that's the best bet for people doing structures. You could always draw the leaves in, and then you could change the color a little bit, give a different value, draw some lighter leaves. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly what you're seeing in the photo, but the more you trace accurately, so you see from far away, that could look a little bit more tree-like as well. All right, so that is my demo.